Heinrich Himmler was one of the most powerful men in Nazi Germany and the architect of some of the Holocaust's most heinous atrocities. Himmler harbored a perverse set of amusements that revealed the depths of his twisted psyche. Behind the facade of a disciplined Nazi leader, Himmler indulged in a dark fascination with the occult, seeking ancient relics and arcane knowledge that he believed would empower the Aryan race to ultimate victory. He was the driving force behind the Lebensborn program, an initiative cloaked in the guise of welfare, but aimed at breeding what he considered the purest of the German race. Yet the contrast between Himmler's public persona and his private life was stark and disturbing. To the outside world, he was a keen gardener, a loving family man with a wife and children, yet he also maintained extramarital affairs that mirrored the duality of his commitment to personal and ideological purity. Himmler's life encapsulated the ultimate contradiction. On one side, the ordinary, even mundane personal interests. On the other, extreme cruelty and fanaticism. Heinrich Luitpold Himmler was born in Munich in the year 1900. As a young man, he was not particularly anti-Semitic. Himmler happily fraternized with Jewish students at the Munich Technical University, where he studied agricultural science and was a keen fencer. He would meet Ernst Röhm, a key player in the creation and rise of the Nazi Party during his time in university, eventually joining his Imperial War Flag Society, an anti-Semitic nationalist paramilitary group. His interest in the Jewish question would increase in 1922 after becoming more immersed in anti-Semitic and occult thought and literature. He joined the Nazi Party in 1923 and was instrumental in the failed Beer Hall Putsch, an attempt by the Nazi Party to violently seize power in Munich. He was not charged due to insufficient evidence. Still, the stain of his arrest led him to being fired from his job as an office clerk, and he was unable to find suitable work elsewhere. These events made him focus on his work with the Nazi Party, where he quickly climbed the ranks, proving himself to be one of Hitler's most valuable associates. Following the Night of the Long Knives and the reorganization of the German police, Himmler became the second most powerful man in Nazi Germany, in control of the SS, the police, and second in rank only to Hitler. The search for the Aryans. Raised as a Roman Catholic, during his time at university, Himmler became interested in the occult. He became anti-Christian, believing the German race should return to what he believed to be their ancestral pagan religion. He rejected the idea of Christian mercy and believed the German people, as descendants of the pure and noble Aryan race, had the right and ability to rule over all others who were considered subhuman or Untermensch. He founded the Ahnenerbe in 1935. The organization was an organ of the SS, dedicated to studying and promoting Nazi ideas of race, racial superiority, and the Aryan myth. Its aim was to uncover the true history of the German people, and to prove that they were the descendants of the original creators of civilization, the Aryans. In regard to this idea, Himmler said, "A nation lives happily in the present and the future so long as it is aware of its past and the greatness of its ancestors." Under the leadership of Himmler, the Ahnenerbe began the search for the lost city of Atlantis, which was believed to be the birthplace of the Aryan race, whose superior bodies and minds allowed them to create great civilizations and eventually rule over all other races. The search for Atlantis and the Aryan race would become Himmler's pet project. It would span almost the entire length of the Nazi regime. In 1938, an expedition was sent to Tibet to search for the lost Atlanteans. Himmler believed the survivors of Atlantis traveled to the highest regions of the earth in order to escape the water that had destroyed their great civilization. During the expedition, the skulls and bodies of the locals were measured and studied, compared against Nazi measurements believed to signify Aryan origin. The Tibetans were declared the survivors of Atlantis. The Ahnenerbe was active worldwide, conducting expeditions in Sweden, France, Tibet, and Bolivia. They searched for significant mythological items, such as the Holy Grail, Spear of Destiny, and Jesus' Crown of Thorns. Expeditions were also actively searching for the lost land of Thule, a mythical land believed to be home to the Hyperboreans, a race of 10-foot-tall giants. Himmler was one of the principal architects of the Holocaust. Anti-Semitism was common in much of Europe during the time, with much of it rooted in the belief that the Jews had been responsible for the crucifixion of Jesus. Himmler's anti-Semitism was different, as it was based on the idea that the Jews were responsible for the defilement of the once pure Aryan race who, if not for Jewish meddling, would be the supreme rulers of the world, which he believed to be their rightful position. Cleansing the German race. As head of the SS, Himmler oversaw the creation of the Race and Settlement Office. Its original aim was to judge the racial purity of the prospective wives of members of the SS. After the conquest of Europe, the office's methods were used to evaluate whether those in occupied territories were racially German or otherwise. Being identified as racially German could mean better rations and access to better jobs. Not meeting these racial classifications could, at its worst, result in death. The Race and Settlement Office played an important role in the Nazi regime, in alignment with the German nationalist concept of Lebensraum, living space. The organization was instrumental in the plantation of Germans in occupied territories, such as Ukraine. Those living in occupied areas used for German expansion were analyzed, and those who did not fit the racial requirements were evicted. The organization also worked with the Lebensborn, fount of life. The Lebensborn worked to increase the ethnic German population by encouraging women to have children and providing welfare to single mothers with racially acceptable children. Himmler had hoped that the Lebensborn program would encourage higher birth rates by allowing single mothers care and financial aid away from the wider society that looked down upon pregnancies outside of marriage. The program relied on privacy so that the unwed mothers in its care would not be shunned from wider German society. Despite the program, Himmler estimated that as many as 100,000 biologically valuable pregnant women had abortions each year, while only 7,000 children were born within the Lebensborn system. The lack of success meant the program had to rely on the kidnapping of children from occupied territories. Children were taken and subject to pseudoscientific analysis to determine whether they were racially German. Those that failed were sent to carry out forced labor or were sent to concentration camps. Children deemed to be German underwent a process of Germanization. They were given new German names and encouraged to forget their old life and family and to become proud of their supposed German race. They were then adopted by German families. One study identified around 20,000 Polish children who were adopted by ethnic German families, while tens of thousands more were taken for use in forced labor and medical experimentation. As the head of the SS, Himmler had control of the vicious Einsatzgruppen, paramilitary death squads tasked with the extermination of Jews, Romani, and other supposed enemies of Nazi-occupied lands. They usually worked in collaboration with the army, local police forces, and local collaborators. One of their worst atrocities was the Babin Yar massacre in German-occupied Kiev. Though it lasted only 2 days, the massacre left over 33,000 dead, most of whom were Jewish. On the 26th of September, public notices were posted around the city in Russian, Ukrainian, and German, reading, "All Yids of the city of Kiev and its vicinity must appear on Monday, 29th September by 8 o'clock in the morning at the corner of Melenkova and Doktorivskaya streets. Bring documents, money, and valuables, and also warm clothing, linen, etc. Any Yids who do not follow this order and are found elsewhere will be shot." The commander of the Einsatzkommando had not expected such a large turnout. They had expected only 5,000 or 6,000 people to assemble, but more than 30,000 came. He even boasted that until the last minute, they still believed that they were to be resettled and not killed. The victims were shepherded through 2 columns of German soldiers like cattle in groups of 10. After giving up their valuables and stripping their clothes, they were led to a ravine where the dead bodies of the previous victims lay. They were ordered to lie on the bodies, where they were then shot, one by one. Himmler, the family man. Unlike in film and television, the villains of history are rarely caricatures of evil. Behind the millions of victims of Himmler, he was, like many other of the worst Nazi criminals, a relatively normal man when at home with his family and loved ones. Hundreds of personal letters written to and by Himmler, along with personal diary entries and photographs, were published by an Israeli newspaper in 2014. The documents provide a glimpse into his home life, which was much like any other. The contrast of Himmler, the keen gardener and loving family man, with Himmler, the mass-murdering war criminal, is an unsettling one. One particularly disturbing note sent to his wife, Margareta, reads, "I am off to Auschwitz. Kisses, your Heini." Photographs include him fishing with his family with a large smile on his face or lovingly embracing his young daughter. In amongst the friendly and loving letters, the husband and wife discussed their virulent hatred of the Jews on one line while talking in soppy romantic language on the next. 9 years after marrying Margareta, Himmler fell in love with his new secretary, Hedwig Potast. She became his personal secretary in 1936, and the two declared their love for each other in 1938. They attempted to keep their relationship purely platonic, but by 1941, they were having an affair, which Margareta eventually discovered. He borrowed 80,000 Reichsmarks to build Potast a home in the idyllic countryside of Bavaria, at Schönau am Königssee. He would have 2 children with Potast, Helga and Nanette. His extramarital relationship was known to his SS colleagues, who largely approved of it, despite the regime's dislike of extramarital sex. With his new mistress, Himmler was said to be more relaxed and even more human. Himmler's final letter, sent just over a month before his death, was addressed to his good, beloved mommy and good, dear little daughter. It read, "You dear ones, just stay healthy for my sake. The Ancient One will protect us, and especially the good German people, and will not let us perish. I send you both, my beloved mammy, and you, my poopy, my dear one, many, many affectionate kisses and greetings. Heil Hitler! With love, your Poppy." The death of Himmler. Himmler died without ever having paid for his crimes. After Hitler's suicide and in the days leading up to the German surrender, Himmler sought a position in the new interim government, remaining as head of the SS. He was formally dismissed on the 6th of May, when he went into hiding. He had made little preparation for an escape, but did have forged identity documents, claiming him to be Sergeant Himmler Heisinger. He was taken by former Soviet POWs at a checkpoint and sent to a holding camp, though his identity was not yet known. British officials noticed his papers bore a stamp often used by SS members in disguise, and an investigation began. After identifying himself to British officer Thomas Sylvester, he was searched and subjected to a medical examination. The doctor wished to examine the inside of Himmler's mouth, but he refused, pulling his head away, biting down on a cyanide capsule. Within 15 minutes, he was dead. He was buried in an unmarked grave, the location of which is still unknown to this day. With any real villain, it's easy to create a cartoon caricature of an evil tyrant totally devoid of love or compassion. The reality is often more unsettling. To imagine someone capable of killing millions is also capable of real love and compassion is more difficult than believing they are nothing but evil and hatred. They are fully human, and it serves as a reminder as to how low mankind can fall.